What's a subtle sign someone is genuinely a good person? Story 1. Their default expectation is that people are generally good. I don't mean that they're naive. They're aware that some people are assholes, that crime happens, but they don't automatically assume strangers are up to no good, that people are trying to screw them over. They're willing to extend a bit of grace when someone is a bit rude. Maybe that person is just having an off day. Story 2. They attract good people, regardless of social income or ranking. It was the first sign I had that my SO was a good person. He was very liked at work as a manager, and whenever he had friends around, they all seemed to have good energy, like good values and qualities. Also, people felt comfortable enough to share personal things with him. I did. I worked a year with him, and the feeling that he was good just got stronger with time. 8 years-ish later, I was spot on my character judgment. Not only is he a good person and partner, he is an awesome dad as well. Story 3. I'm a kind person, but my guy, he's a good man. No one will scroll far enough to read this, so why not brag on him? My partner is almost 50. Big, quiet man. Been working in construction for over 30 years. He hires subs to do a lot of the specialized jobs like painters. He's been hiring these painters as long as he's been in the business. About a week or so ago, the owners of the home they are building were having a holiday party for the crew, interior designer, and architect. My partner got an igloo mug and Christmas card. Inside was a nice bonus in cash. He thanked them and went to check on the rest of the crew. He noticed all the main crew got the igloo mug and a card, with some cash except the 5 painters. They just got igloo mugs, which is fine. The owners didn't need to give anyone anything that's on the business they work for. But my guy knows these guys. This year, they had lost the owner of the painting business and the father of one of them. 2 of the guys just started families. They are like his main crew. He took his bonus, gave each of them some of the money, and wished them a Merry Christmas. They tried to refuse. They told him they were fine. But my quiet guy did what he does best, ignored them, and walked off. No need for props or thank yous, just a good heart. That is a good man. Story 4, a story from just now today. I have a friend who got hurt a few days ago, needed hospitalization. She came back to her home after surgery and family members were helping her, friends were helping her, etc. She can hardly move, back and spine all tore up. During this time, one of her friends, a guy who I assumed was just sort of a simp and probably would be scarce until she was hot again, showed up at her house while we were there helping her. He said hi, and then went into the kitchen and cleaned it. Then he made her favorite meal, boxed it up, put it in the fridge, told her it was there when she needed it, cleaned up any mess, and said, bye. He literally showed up to talk to no one, just to clean and leave her something nice, and never made a big deal, didn't even disrupt our conversations. After he left, we wandered into the kitchen to find it spotless. Even the pot he used for cooking was washed and put away. Seems he tidied up the entryway too. I suppose he might still be a simp, but if he is, he's not asking for attention, and he's super helpful. I've decided I think he's great. Story 5. I was one of 40 or so people from my church feeding the homeless at the Salvation Army shelter one night. I dumped a bag of dinner rolls into a bowl. Don't just dump them, our group leader said. Presentation is important. I rearranged them nicely. Treating everyone with respect, be they guests in your home or homeless people in a shelter, is a mark of a genuinely good person. Story 6. No such thing. There are only people trying their best to do and to be better. Only a few. Way more people just trying to get by and don't have to give about much else. And plenty that have a totally opposed view of what is good to your view of good. You don't have subtle ways of knowing whether someone is really good or not, and I would caution believing otherwise. Story 7. How they act towards service staff and animals is a good indicator. Also how they act when they think no one is looking, as well as not telling anyone about the good deeds they have done in private. I was at work out in a city one day, and I saw a lady in a wheelchair struggling up a sloped street. I ran across and helped her out, not knowing I was being watched, and someone I knew was blown away and commended me for being a good person. But I was just thinking, you wouldn't help? It's nuts how afraid people are to be a good person, do the right thing sometimes, when it doesn't take a whole lot of effort or self-sacrifice. Yes, I just virtue signaled, but it was to make a point on an anonymous platform. Story 8. I seen a thing ages ago about how people that take their shopping trolley, cart for our American friends, back to the bay once they've unloaded their shopping shows, that someone is a decent human being. It costs nothing, it's not mandatory, and it benefits others. Always stuck with me for some reason. Story 9. Got a cancer diagnosis in January. I had just started dating this woman. She came with me to my first appointment for chemo. I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting there, this is it. She's going to bail so quick once the side effects start. She was there for me every single time. Made it through the treatments, and now I'm cancer-free and married her in August. Story 10. I work in a large office building. We see the same half-dozen cleaning staff towards the end of every afternoon, when they come in to do the kitchens and bathrooms. The kitchen is right by the entrance of the elevator lobby. On their way out the door to go home, some office staff say good night or see you later to the cleaners. Others don't bother to acknowledge them as people. Story 11. Talking to others below their social class as equals and friends. This goes somewhat beyond treat your service sector workers well, because it's about making the extra effort beyond what good manners requires to remove the social distance between people. Also, people who don't engage in idle gossip and try to be extremely mindful of what they share about others when they're not present. Story 12. It can honestly be the slightest of glances. Making eye contact with someone when some other third person is being annoying, or nodding in appreciation for holding the door, or waving somebody to cross the road, or being able to make fun of someone and they give it right back and you both laugh, to apologizing when they're wrong. There's so many. It's kind of a you know it when you see it kind of thing. Story 13. I have learned to gauge it pretty well with how one-on-one conversations go. If you can have a general conversation with someone and they listen to your points and expand and add their own, with an equal give and take from both sides, usually they're a pretty decent person. Fair warning though, it can be hard to gauge with people with ADHD, but they're almost definitely a good person if they got the ADHD brain and can still do this in conversation. It can also be a good test for yourself. Do you spend more time talking or listening? Story 14. IMO. A subtle sign someone's a good person is how they treat people they don't have to be nice to. You know, the server, the cashier, the guy stocking shelves. If they're consistently kind and respectful to everyone, regardless of their social status or perceived power, that's a huge indicator. It shows they have genuine empathy and aren't just putting on a show for folks they think matter. Story 15. It's maybe not that subtle, but I texted my friend that he may be better off/happier without me. Not in a mental health way, just generally. And he said, I told you won't get rid of me that easily. And it was at 2 a.m. The next day, we talked normally. He never held it over my head. It was around the time my ex came back. I felt extremely bad and thought he'd enjoy more peace and quiet. Story 16. A person who helps someone who has nothing to offer in return truly stands out. Most people are willing to help others when they know they'll be repaid in some way. However, a person's true nature is revealed when they extend help to those who cannot repay them at all. For instance, someone who cares for stray animals or assists an elderly person in public shows genuine kindness. Similarly, treating people who are less privileged with respect and compassion is a true mark of goodness. It's common to see people bringing expensive gifts or tokens for their bosses or seniors, but when it comes to their servants or those below them in status, their gestures often become mere formalities. How you treat those who can neither harm nor benefit you speaks volumes about how genuinely good you are. Story 17. They keep being kind, even when they don't get it reciprocated. Many people describe how they stop being nice after they found out the world doesn't reward kindness. When you're acting nice or going out of your way to help others just because you think it will get you further in society, you weren't a kind person all along. Story 18. They realize that not much in this world matters. They question everything, but allow other people to live their lives. They live their lives as to not affect others and seek fulfillment where they can get it. They put in effort and literally try. That's all you can do, and if you can find satisfaction in doing that, you've won. Story 19. I met somebody I started working on music projects with a couple of years ago. At the time, I was finishing up my music technology degree. For our first meeting since we met on Reddit, I decided to meet him at my college's studio rather than either of us getting chained up in some basement. We rapidly became close friends. Sometime later, I was feeling down on myself and was chatting with him. I told him I felt like I was an asshole, and he replied by saying, "No, you are a good person, and I know that because when I was at the school, everybody there was happy to see you." As far as I was seeing, I was having totally normal interactions with my classmates and others at the school. The fact that people were generally happy to see me didn't register as something that was unusual to me. I didn't realize that it's not normal for people to just generally be happy you're there. Story 20. Truly good people. When they see someone struggling, they help instead of making light of them or encouraging them to leave because they aren't welcome in their current state. They also don't just say nothing. Good people stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves and say things even when they aren't popular. This disqualifies like 90% of you, but I think those numbers would be right. Most people are not good. Story 21. There was a guy I worked with years ago whose first line whenever someone was complaining was, "Is there anything I can do to help?" Always. Not "I'm sorry" or "that's too bad" or anything else. Thing is, he meant it. Other people might have used this as a way to shut down complaints that had nothing to do with them. He genuinely was offering to help people when they had trouble. More often than not, there wasn't anything he could do to help them, but you could see the relief on people's faces and how it lightened their mood just to know that there was someone who at least was offering to help them and was available if they needed it. He was a good dude. Story 22. If multiple people also think they're a good person, despite them never saying, "I think I'm a good person," or doing anything that comes across them specifically trying to give people that impression, as opposed to just doing things a good person does, which they often do without trying to call attention to themselves. They just do it out of their own good nature. It's a very subtle difference in behavior, but there is a difference between someone who does things to make others think they are a good person, even if they are secretly not or don't really care about being a good person, and someone who does things because they want to be a good person and feel like they are a good person, even when others may not notice their good deeds. Story 23. I went through a time where I was grumpy all the time, didn't care about much at all. However, it took some individuals to show me the other side, the kindness that people can show, the random message saying, "You were on my mind today and I hope today has been good for you." The ones who picked up the phone at 2 a.m. because I was struggling with life events, the ones I finally realized for the first time in my life that they truly cared. It made life meaningful. That life was worth continuing and learning how to live a life where I'm worthy of being happy. It is now 15 years later. The same things those random strangers so long ago taught me who are now my best friends. I now the same for others regardless it is convenient for me or not. I want to help others be happy and see they can see that they are also worthy of being treated with kindness, with dignity, and to be respected. Story 24. This is a little bit of a toot my own horn thing. Whenever I interact with a service worker, waiter, cashier, cleaner, etc., after they help me, I always look at them directly to tell them thank you. It's my hope that it comes across that actually mean what I express my appreciation. I do. And that it's not just us going through the motions about it. It's super subtle and probably not impactful, but as someone who also works in service-related industry, sometimes it's the little things that help getting through the rest of the crap. And if that helps me, why wouldn't it help them? Story 25. I knew my husband was a good man when he paid for a service for an older gentleman that just lost his wife. My husband was a pest control technician at the time. He went to a man's house who was getting wasps flying down his chimney. He was able to take care of the wasp issue and got talking to the man. He was on a fixed income and just lost his wife. My husband called me and told me that he wanted to pay the $150 for the man's service himself. He didn't want anyone at work to know, just wanted to do something nice for this man who was going through a hard time. I knew right then that I wanted to marry him, and we did about a year later. Story 26. They do the right thing when unobserved and don't talk about it. Without getting into details, I work in a field where lots of electronic logs are generated by user actions, many of which can positively or negatively affect third parties, depending on how processes are handled. When I check a log history, I have enough operational knowledge to recognize when things are being done right or lazily, sloppily, and have a mental database of staff who cut corners and kick the can in ways that hurt other people versus staff who do the job right even when it's time-consuming or inconvenient. Story 27. The way other people will talk about them or react when they enter a space. I was walking past the front desk at a previous job and the receptionist, who was talking to a guest, said, "Oh, and this is S. He works here and is the most helpful person ever." I don't think of myself as helpful, but I do believe the way a person treats people throughout the workplace hierarchy shows how much they value people and their character. Anyways, I went back later to ask her why she said that, and she said, "Well, every time I'm running late to the reception desk and can't get a coffee for free from the on-site coffee shop, you always get me one. Plus, whenever you walk by and I need help answering something or directing someone, you always make yourself available or take the person where they need to go. And you've covered the front desk for me so I can sneak away to go to the bathroom." I felt like those things may have happened half a dozen times, and I was always on my way to myself, my free coffee, when I saw she didn't have hers. For that, I don't think I'm a good person. But I think it just goes to show you what people value in life and that most people set a low bar for us to step over. Story 28. I know a guy who's always talking to people. I don't know. He just loves to strike up a conversation, and he lets you talk and is always genuinely interested. He'll let you go on and on. Also, he prays over people when they're down on their luck, which could be uncomfortable, but I think he reads the room well and only does it consensually. I think he's genuinely comforted a lot of people. Story 29. I had a boss once. I made a mistake on a high-stress day, and he reamed me out for it. He was absolutely right to do so. I remember thinking to myself, he won't like the way he approached that conversation and will apologize for it. Later that day, he pulled me aside and apologized for the way he spoke to me, and that even though I'd screwed up, he still had no right to speak to me the way he did. Always had immense respect for him as a boss and a person. I also remember thinking that there are very few people that I would expect that from and would actually meet that expectation. Story 30. They don't start their food until all the orders arrive for the table. I don't know why, but I feel like when we are together in a restaurant, it's basic manners that we eat together too. If the food has to be eaten hot, then a simple bring all the orders together to the waiter ensures everything arrives at the same time. Story 31. They willingly take time to show you or teach you something when you ask. They refrain from it when not asked, or when asked not to. They do small things that set others in a position to be able to help people and to be generous. They respect other people's choices even when it's not easy. You feel good when around them, at ease. Story 32. They say please and thank you when they don't have to. I'm sure we can all agree that saying please and thank you is the bare minimum, and that there are most likely people with good manners who aren't great people. However, saying pleasantries in situations that don't necessarily demand it, I find tends to be a sign of a good person. Story 33. I made a new friend this year. One hangout, she brought sandwiches she made for the both of us without me asking. I'm usually the person who takes care of other people, and this was the first time I've had someone else take care of me. It was a small gesture, but it made me so genuinely happy. It was the most delicious sandwich I've ever tasted. Story 34. When you exaggerate or talk in hyperbole, and it's not that clear to the other person that you're joking, they will be very subtle about calling you on your exaggeration, to which you can tell them you were just joking. Met a couple people like this, and they are always nice to have around. As opposed to the guy that will immediately try to call you a liar in an attempt to embarrass you. Story 35. When they don't defend and attack people based on their culture's social hierarchies and traditions. Many times I've been in a situation where an older person has done something awful to me, and people have told me that it's entirely my fault, and the older person is completely flawless because respect elders and young people should bow to older people. Then the next day, the same people say, you are so smart and know everything. Tell me how this works. And complain when I answer, why don't you ask your perfect, flawless elders to show you how to cure cancer and build flying cars? Story 36. There's no such thing as a genuinely good person. We all make mistakes. We all accidentally hurt people's feelings, or are selfish sometimes, or can be annoying, or any number of things. We're all people. We're all the same. We've all got good and bad in us. Trying to separate society into good people and bad people is an exercise in futility. Martin Luther King Jr. cheated on his wife. George Washington owned slaves. Abraham Lincoln was super racist by today's standards. All of the great people you can think of from history were all bad people sometimes too. Just like all of us today. There are no all good or all bad people. Maybe you could say it's a range, but I think even that is a stretch. Story 37. Yep. How they treat people who can offer them very, very little other than poor conversation. I worry about my psyche with pangs of lessened motivation when certain people have little to offer me and just take. But know it's probably guilt about my own esteem and rivaling it, LOL. But I stop being concerned when I see myself have interest in people who clearly don't get a moment of conversation in a lonely home, old, disabled, struggling financially, but still kind, or do things others would not when no one is there to see it, preferably so. IDK, psychopaths have intense views of rules and their excuse psychologically for hypocritical or malevolent behaviors, justifying themselves. And I know I may do that to 5 degrees or so. Another hint is seeing how someone serves food to others, how someone acts in their home towards guests, how someone treats service people is a huge one. But most of all, how someone responds to the expression of a personal boundary, especially those not affecting the person the boundary is requested of, with grace or defensiveness. Story 38. Many times when I eat in a restaurant, there is an empty table next to me, but strangers always want to share the table with me. I'm average looking, not good looking, which rules out the possibility that they want to strike up a conversation with me. My friend said maybe it's because I look like a nice guy. Story 39. How they treat customer service workers who just kind sucks at their job. For example, a waitress who just messes up an order, or is inattentive. Someone who sucks at their job is not a bad person. You quite literally do not know them, and especially how they treat a worker who's giving them bad news that isn't there, i.e. telling you something costs a lot more than it should, or that the kitchen burnt your food, etc. How they treat this person is a good test on how they treat someone without any transactional obligation to be nice to them, meaning it's a good reflection of how they will treat you unconditionally when you're not at your best or actively offering them compensation in any way of being your friend's significant other. Story 40. They avoid backbiting, even when someone wrongs them, and instead focus on highlighting their positive qualities. They are genuinely grateful for everything in their lives, from the smallest blessings to the biggest achievements. Kindness defines them. They are never rude and always willing to help others, expecting nothing in return. Story 41. They hang the clothes back on the hangers the right way when leaving the dressing room. My mom always used to make me turn everything right side out and hang it back up because someone else would have to otherwise. Same principle as returning the shopping cart, really. Story 42. They're nice to the low-ranking people in a sincere and not performative or patronizing manner. They let the introverts speak. They don't scoff at the panhandler. They're equally nice to the low-level employee as they are to the boss. They don't just shower praise on the people who are already showered in praise, etc. Story 43. This theory has been debunked by every single person who has ever worked at a grocery store at the lowest level. We liked grabbing carts. It was a break from the toils of mopping and a great way to get outside. I leave my carts around because I'm educated and nice. Everyone else is virtue signaling. If you want cheap virtue, just wipe your tables down or something, but leave the carts where they are. Next theme. What's something you didn't know was expensive until you became an adult? Story 1. Bicycles, or at least a certain variety of them. While living in New York, I thought what a great idea it would be to get a street bike. I'd get exercise, could go exploring, and maybe even bike to work. I went into a bike shop and found a cool-looking bike I liked. When I turned over the price tag, that cool bike cost $4,000. Price tags on other bikes were equally shocking. They must have been made from high-grade unobtainium. I took up jogging instead. Story 2. Fruit. To make a long story short, I was a chicken, broccoli, and brown rice guy in college. Very healthy and relatively cheap. I lifted weights, ran, and cooked my own food in my apartment since eating out was expensive. Once I met my wife and we got married, I realized just how expensive fruit was. Every trip to the store is blueberries, apples, oranges, grapefruits, and when in season, mangoes, kiwi, etc. It's honestly fine to love it, and it's still got all the fiber versus drinking fruit juice, but damn, it's expensive compared to veggies. I get plenty of spinach and onions and other veggies, and it's a fraction of the cost. I don't mind buying it since, of course, it's good, but geez. Story 3, literally everything. My dad used to say to take care of everything. He said to imagine it was made of money, BC, each thing cost money. He was right. Life is expensive. P.S. My dad is also one of the most generous people I know. He's given chocolate to inmates when he worked on computers at jails, put homeless people in hotels for the night, and given them cash. And he made sure his family, my mom, his wife, and 5 children, were taken care of with everything we needed and many of the things we wanted. Story 4, Niagara Falls. My parents took my 2 sisters and I when we were ages 10, 13. We quickly became bored of the view and soon after were miserable brats when we didn't get to do any of the fun tourist attractions. Went back when I was 25 expecting to do all the fun things and I was shocked. I instantly understood why we didn't do any of the paid fun. Felt lucky my parents even took us to dinner at the Rainforest Cafe. Story 5. A better question is, what's still cheap? The answer, I found a Chinese food place that does $1.50 for a generous scoop of food. Teriyaki beef, sesame/bourbon/sweet, and sour General Tso's chicken, lo mein, fried rice, wonton soup, all the good shit. There's got to be a reason it's $1.50, but I've decided this gift horse shall have its mouth clamped shut. Story 6. Got into golf a few months ago. Did not realize how expensive of a hobby that can be. Clubs are ridiculously overpriced. Luckily, my buddy who got me into it hooked me up with his old Callaway set. Very grateful for that. You want lessons? That can be $50 an hour at my local course. Want to go play around? That's anywhere from $30, $80 near me. Want to hit the range? Well, that's actually not bad. It just adds up. It's like $6 for a bag of balls. But still, golf clothes, golf bag, cleaning stuff, shit adds up. But I love it. Story 7. Automotive repairs. Any and all. Cars are necessary in most of the U.S., and there is not a single car in existence that won't need some kind of maintenance. That's why I bought the $12 thermostat and spent an hour and a half swapping it out and doing a coolant flush BC my engine was overheating. Saved myself hundreds by avoiding a shop. Manual clutch swap is next. Story 8. This is not an essential item, but the cost of parts on luxury cars. People always consider the price of the car itself, but the expense for simple things like headlights, tires, and trunk repairs can often be quite high. I've never owned one, but a family member does. And even if I had the money for the car, I couldn't justify the cost of the maintenance. Story 9. The cost of being a single-family household. I don't qualify for the energy savings upgrade rebates because I live in an apartment. Smaller quantities of things like produce that I will use up fully are more expensive than larger sizes, or there is a discount for multiples when I only need the one thing. If I get sick, I have no one to take care of me, physically and financially. Story 10, being single. Not having anyone to split all your costs with is a permanent financial handicap. Not to mention you have zero safety net if you lose your job, get sick, etc. Your social network is halved, which can impact career prospects, as can just showing up alone to work events when everyone else has a +1. Even if you're fortunate and reach household income parity with your coupled-up friends, they get double the tax-free allowance you do, and they hit the higher tax brackets much later. There are a whole load of intangible costs, too. Those are just a few of the most obvious. Story 11. Groceries. Mayan. I just graduated from college and living alone since leaving high school. It felt kind of cool, but after working and studying at the same time, OMG, that was pretty rough. My mother wanted to help financially, but wanted to do myself. I did what I had to. I got few saving RN, but every time I go to do groceries and see just 0.25 cents up, I feel like, oh, I need to earn more. IDK. Story 12. Adulting. Every aspect of life requires money. In order to make money, you have to have money to spend on such things as shelter, address, cleanliness, clothes, transportation, since most of the USA is not walkable, food, water, utilities. Now, in the 21st century, it is expected of everyone to own a smartphone and have internet access. Add-on fees for literally everything on the list upon purchase or subscription. Everything except food is taxed. Plus, there's social economic responsibilities, recreation, entertainment, etc. Those all cost money. Add again that society expects you to get married and have at least one offspring. That's when all those other costs skyrocket into oblivion. Dare I say more? In today's economic situation, if you're making less than $100,000 per year, you're going to have a tough time affording the aforementioned list. My wife and I have a daughter. Together, we make $43,000. We have one vehicle, make too much for financial and/or food assistance. We struggle to make ends meet. We both do side-got work for extra money. Today's world sucks. Unless you happen to win the birth lottery. Story 13, heat. One tank of heating fuel will get me through the winter comfortably at about 65 degrees. 15 years ago, I let a family friend stay with me for a few weeks, and he was significantly older than I am and constantly complained about the heat. When I left the house, he would turn it up to 80 degrees and burn through an entire tank of fuel in a month and a half. That was nearly $800 he burned through. If you're cold, put on a damn sweatshirt or you pay the bills. I feel like I owe my mom an apology for complaining about things like that. Heating fuel can last the entire winter or be gone in a month depending on the person. Story 14. Health insurance. I live in one of those sheltered counties where health insurance is commonly paid by everyone and automatically deducted from your income. So the first time my income went over the minimum income to pay normal taxes, I was quite astonished how much went into health insurance. Still a pretty good deal, as I was into my mid-20s until I first really realized that going to the doctor is not free. Story 15, houses. As a small kid, I thought a house was like $500. Then, when I got to grips with big numbers and saw that you could buy a cozy enough starter home in The Sims for like $20K, I thought that was the price for the cheapest. Learned at 12/13 that you need at least $300K for a dilapidated house in my country. Wasn't exactly an adult when I found this out, but I was still shocked, LOL. Story 16. Having your dream house. I mean, I knew what sorts of prices you had to expect where, and was vaguely aware that often you would find sort of affordable houses that are in no livable shape. But I just hadn't realized how unrealistic it is to buy a house. Even one that's in absolute shambles in the middle of nowhere can go for 200,000 euro. I just didn't realize until recently how long you have to pay off that mortgage, let alone making that house your own. Even if it is in a livable state, including all the extra stuff you might want to have like solar panels or luxury stuff like a pool is so expensive, I would never. Story 17. That even if I could potentially do something for $50 in 30 minutes, it will probably be $600 for 18 hours then crying, so might as well pay the specialist $400 for 15 minutes of work. I thought people didn't fix issues because they were lazy. Turns out there's a lot of feeling and money behind it. I learned that adult lesson fast. Story 18. Honestly, I was recently browsing a store that is similar to Harbor Freight and Home Depot, and for real, a bunch of safes, vaults, and air compressors. Both my uncle and my older brother have really good air compressors. Big tanks that are maybe 4-5 feet tall, have really thick but long hoses, and you simply hold this metal handle type of thing and squeeze it to blow some compressed air. That shit is so damn expensive. Those two always gave me the impression, maybe $100 or $200 for something really good like that. Story 19, food. Now, as an adult, I realize that A, food is ridiculously pricey, and B, It's especially expensive if you don't buy cheap stuff like Kraft mac and cheese like my parents did when I was a kid. Feeding my children actual healthy food is the biggest expense we have outside my mortgage. Story 20. Having a dog. I didn't understand why my mom was so against getting a 2/3 RD dog. Now that third dog lives with me full-time, I'm responsible for all his expenses. And it's insane how expensive it is to be a good pet owner. I don't think I could get a second at this point. Story 21. I didn't realize how expensive being poor was until I went from a solidly middle-class family to living totally on my own at 23 with no real transition or support system. Can't afford that $90 pair of shoes? That's okay, these $20 ones will do, but you'll need to buy a new pair every other month or so. So now those $20 shoes cost $120 for the year. Can't afford to pay your bills on time? That's fine, you'll get warning notices before everything was cut off, but now you have late fees, return check, or NSF for online bill pay fees, reconnection fees, etc. Couldn't pay for that cavity correction? Enjoy the root canal and ensuing aftercare costs? Couldn't get that yearly checkup because the doctors always find something additional to test for to make sure it isn't a free appointment as required by U.S. health insurance laws? Now you've got stage 3 cancer, Godspeed. Being poor is expensive, dude. It is so much more expensive than being middle class because costs deteriorate and multiply. We are literally punished for being poor, and God forbid you /spouse/roommate gets laid off suddenly. Landlords generally don't give a flying what's going on in your personal life. Story 22. Appliances. I always knew they were not cheap, but it was not until I was in my 40s that I actually went out to price and buy my own microwave, refrigerator, and clothes washer dryer. As a renter for decades, it had just never crossed my mind. Microwaves at around $300 are by far the cheapest on that list, and no decent washer is less than around $500. Holy smokes! Story 23. Life. I used to look at my mother figure and talk about how I wanted $1,000 so bad to buy all the toys in Walmart. She would always say how $1,000 ain't shit. Oh, how she was right. Took my child birthday shopping and let him just pick toys off the aisles. Probably spent $1,000 in 10 minutes on less than 20 things. Before anyone says anything about me doing this with my kid, I hadn't seen him in a year because his baby mama is trash, so I wanted to give him a good birthday. I probably will never do it again, though, and learned my lesson. Next time, I will just buy him $1,000 worth of toys for $500 myself by looking for deals. Story 24. Hoses. I moved into a place with a little backyard and spigot for a hose, so I decided to grab one at Walmart. $50 for the cheapest, shortest, most basic little hose. $100 for one of the nicer, stretchy ones. What? Also vet care. I took in a little kitty I found starving on the street and she was acting sick this past weekend, so I thought she better get a checkup. Called a vet and they let me know it was $300 up front before she's even seen. I knew surgeries and stuff were pricey, but just for a vet to look at her? Meds and stuff for people too. I remember when I was 18, I made $7, 25 hour, still the minimum wage in my state BTW. I got a yeast infection and the doctor prescribed me a single suppository to fix things. After insurance, it was still $100 and I cried BC, my vagina hurt so bad, and I'd have to work 14 hours to afford this little egg to put up there, and I was so scared I wouldn't be able to pay rent if I bought the meds. Oh, mal. Story 25. Traveling. When I was a younger kid, I used to go everywhere. I am from Europe. Flew to France every vacation, India for summer, Sri Lanka, USA, and many more, and always taught it was something normal. When I was a bit older, like 15, I realized that it was not something normal to travel all the time. I used to think as airports as my second home. I really enjoyed it there since I met so many new people and cultures. Story 26. Living. Okay, to be more serious, just actual groceries. I mean, sure, inflation is part of it. But sometimes I buy stuff for meals we're going to make and I just go, you sure we can't do instant noodles for a few dinners? I became a lot more careful with leftovers and throwing out food when I became a homeowner. Also HOAs. But I mean, that's more expensive than I thought, and more WTF is an HOA. XP. Next theme. What makes you feel old? Story 1. New generation slang and the fact I don't understand modern technology anymore. Paying DOW phone goes beyond me, but I understand it and use it when I forget my wallet. But when I worked in souvenir shop and people paid with their watches, that surprised me a lot. Story 2. Everything I feel I'm stuck in the past. Between the idea of the good old days that in fact were not that good when you take off the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia and a future, that would be an utopia that never can happen at all. But for a better one, when I see music videos and there's written Live on Stage 2004, then I'm like, wait, that was just yesterday, before I realized 20 years have passed and it's now 2024. Story 3. Realizing that there's much more to worry about than just going to school on time, completing homework and studying for exams, like navigating relationships, managing expectations, dealing with uncertainty, and figuring out who you are and what you want from life. Story 4. When I mention something normal when I was younger online and get completely disbelieved or told my parents must have been very neglectful, being out drinking and gigging until 2 a.m. at 15, going to school on a public bus and a train by myself at the age of 7, etc. I await the 2 responses and the downvotes for basically just remembering accurately. Story 5. Lately I've been noticing some changes in myself that really make me feel old. I suddenly started eating things I never liked before, becoming more like my mom in ways I never imagined. I now absolutely hate dirt, avoid going out to parties, and can't stand noisy environments anymore. The biggest wake-up call? I actually pay bills ***. It's like I've shifted into full-on adult mode, and it's both surprising and, well, a little shocking. Does anyone else feel like they've turned into their parents without even realizing it? Story 6. I enjoy a good TikTok scroll, but I have to say that a lot of people there make me feel pretty old. For example, there is this attitude that the world was very different back then. And by back then, they are talking about 2011 or something. This seems to be agreed upon by everyone on that app. 2011 was like 3 weeks ago for me, but these people really seem to think it was the Stone Ages, probably because they were kids not long ago, and that's just their perspective. Story 7. The realization that I am no longer cool. I was crazy and carefree, never fit into one group, hung out with everyone. Everyone liked me. Stoners, jocks, preps, rich, poor, every culture, every religion, every walk of life. I had close friends that were Christian, the weekly youth group type, and then I had friends that were gang members. I was always doing something. I went from moving all over the U.S. numerous times, coast to coast, then fast forward to now where my life is much slower and I have been in the same place for 20 years. The people that know me now have zero idea that I was once really cool. I am totally an old person. Not knowing what the popular trends or the most popular music or even the words that the younger generation is using makes me feel really old. I feel like everyone is in a club that I am not allowed to belong to.